Of course, all of us were scared because we didn't want to be caught. Otherwise, we'll be in jails for years and years.
December 10, 1982, the day you never forget.
Found out that all he wanted was to take all of our gold and money and anything that was on the boat that was of value.
You were in Refugio Camp for over a year. Were you treated well there? How was the living condition that time?
11 days. We didn't have food.
What are the most common lung and esophageal conditions that people should be aware of?
Actually, the smoking-related diseases is common. Is lung cancers, breast cancer, colon cancer, prostate cancer, but its mortality is very high. It is the number one cancer killer.
What's one piece of medical advice you believe everyone should know and follow?
Nutrition is medicine. So what you eat makes who you are.
Before we leave, what advice would you like to give to the new immigrants?
All I can tell them is that they've won the lottery. Coming to Canada is truly the best places on earth.
Alright, hello, namaste, and welcome to Beyond the Borders with Arjun Season 1, Episode 14. This is me, Arjun. You are listening to us all over the world by 96.7 and cklu.ca, as well as Radio Player Canada app. Thank you so much for listening. Once again, welcome to Beyond the Borders with Arjun, where we explore extraordinary stories of resilience, courage, and the power of human spirit. Today, we have the privilege of sharing the journey of an exceptional guest, a thoracic surgeon, Dr. T. David Ewing-Bui, who has dedicated his life not only to healing, but to uplifting his community and the people around him. Born in Vietnam, he faced unimaginable hardship as a child, witnessing trauma of war, feeling persecution, and embarking harrowing journey as a refugee at just 12 years old. From enduring the horrors of hunger and fear on a small boat in the South China Sea to overcoming language and cultural barriers in a new country, he has faced and conquered every challenge with grace, determination, and vision for a better future. Now, as a highly respected thoracic surgeon, he specializes in disease of the lungs and esophagus with a passion for minimally invasive surgery. He believes in the power of medicine to not only cure but to minimize trauma, reduce pain, and improve the lives of his patients. Yet, his contribution go far beyond the operating rooms. As the second vice president of the Sudbury Multicultural and Folk Art Association and the president of the Vietnamese Association of Sudbury, he tirelessly works to support newcomers and immigrants, ensuring support. They have the tools, resources, and community they need to succeed in their new lives. His story is one of the survival, success, and service, an inspiring reminder of the strength that comes from adversity and the incredible heights one can reach with perseverance and compassion. So, ladies and gentlemen, join us as we dive into this incredible journey of hope, healing, and humanity. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. David. Doctor, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for blessing our show today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
All right, Doctor, let's do some cultural accents. Thank you. You say, come on.
Very good, yeah. Cảm ơn.
Come on. And
Yes.
welcome is come.
Chào mừng.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you share some more about your languages as well?
Vietnamese is a very musical language, so it can be difficult for someone who is not used to different intonations. So for us, for instance, the word la, L-A, if you say it with different tones, it actually means different things. So for instance, la means to yell, la means a leaf.
Mm-hmm.
La is to be. La is strange. And la is it's like cold water or something like that. So
Mm.
it's very musical. So if you don't um, accent it correctly, it can sound quite different. Although overall, I think when you speak, it's in the context, so people will forgive you if you don't say it correctly.
All right. After that quick cultural accents, I'm gonna begin your journey to Canada from Vietnam. Your journey to Canada from Vietnam was filled with unimaginable challenges. Can you tell us more about the emotions and thoughts you experienced during that journey overall? December 10, 1982, the day you never forget in your life, you come to Canada for the first time. So I want to listen to your journey from beginning till you landed in Canada for the first time.
Um, it sort of goes back to when the Vietnam War ended, when the Americans withdrew and the communists took over Vietnam. So my family was essentially branded as capitalists in a communist country because we were landowners. We also had many properties. We were considered to be the wealthier class. So as a result, you're being persecuted by the government. So they basically take all of your properties except for your house. They would come and take all the equipment, all the materials that my parents owned, and they just took like everything, trucks after trucks. So it was a significant blow to our families, wealth, and I still remember my mother cried for months on end. It's just she could not handle the um, the loss to our family because in Vietnam, basically, with your wealth is what you own, and that's how you pass on to your kids. So it's a very it's something that families do in Vietnam, and they believe strongly in that. So it was really quite an emotional time for everyone seeing my mother how destroyed she was with the changes. But anyhow, my mother was very strong. She was very resilient, and she found ways to do business, even though we were not allowed, because all businesses are not allowed to be open unless it's approved by the government, or it's basically all government controlled. And so she actually, the time that I left Vietnam, escaped Vietnam actually, was when she was jailed for selling telephone cables, and that was supposed to be capital punishment. I didn't know that at the time, but anyhow, I was too young. I was 11 years old. But my oldest brother, seeing how all of us were essentially barred from going to university because of our status as enemies of the country, felt that there's no future for any of us. And so he organized for three people to escape, himself as the oldest, and then my third oldest brother, who was the more reliable brother, and then my youngest brother. So I wasn't included actually in the original plan. Uh, but it wasn't until I guess he must have changed his mind because of the way they organized so that young kids go out to the boat first so it doesn't look suspicious. So he felt that my brother was too young at that time so he wanted me to come along to supervise him, sort of thing, so that he wouldn't be too scared. So I somehow was thrust into that position uh, without my knowledge, of course, and I didn't know that I was going to escape Vietnam that very night. And it was all top secret. And so around 10 o'clock, both of me and my younger brother were taken out to a place near the beach, and then at 11 o'clock we were taken out to the big boat through by using a little small basket. And I believe around 1 o'clock, when there were gunshots on the beach, the organizers on our boat basically were quite afraid that the plan was discovered. So as a result, he left Um, and so on the boat were mostly just the men as the organizers, whereas the rest of the boat were made of families like mine, young kids and women and children who were there without their husband. So 21 people essentially was on this boat that left at around 1 o'clock in the morning. The plan was originally at 2 o'clock in the morning. My older brothers, were supposed to pretend to swim out and then be picked up. But when they swam out at 2 o'clock in the morning, the boat already left. So that's how we began our journey on the ocean for about 11 days. And because they left early, they did not have any of the organized food and water and all that. So they were just too scared. So they left. And so the next day at around noon, I still remember vividly, there was a boat that was coming very fast at us. And then all of a sudden it was shooting at the boat. So we discovered it was actually a communist, probably a policeman, and of course, all of us were scared because we didn't want to be caught. Otherwise, we'll be in jails for years and years. So as a result, we found out that all he wanted was to take all of our gold and money and anything that was on the boat that was of value. So all the women took, of course, all their rings and necklaces and their US dollars that they saved for the trip, and basically we were stripped of anything of value. In return, he gave us a few tanks of water, and that's how we left. So we were thankful that we didn't get pulled back, and we went on, and over the next 11 days, we didn't have food. We were faced with two storms. I still remember vividly the waves were so high that I thought we were going to the bottom of the ocean. It was, and for, of course, 4 or 5 days, we were so deathly ill with seasickness that we were not eating anything at all, just vomiting. And um, I was holding on to my mother's photo when I left, and because of the waves and the storms, the salt water basically faded all the image, so it was all white. Uh, but anyhow, it was quite a journey. It was I can still remember clearly all the moments on that boat, how we were starving, and we were rationing the water that was getting lower and lower. We were drinking from the gas cans where we used to catch the rain, and the strong gas smell when we were drinking it. I also remember I mean, eagerly wanting to see land because all we saw was water. So it was quite an experience. Yeah, it was. We were basically just wanting to go back and see our mom and our father, and I was initially saying, "Oh, we were hoping to be caught by the Russians, so we could go back." And of course, some of the older boys said that if we say that again, they're gonna put us as shark food. So that was the end of it. But anyhow, yeah, we eventually landed in Macau, and that's where we stayed at the refugee camp for over a
Doctor,
year.
can you share your experience when you were in refugee camp for over a year? Were you treated well there? How was the living condition that time?
The first 6 months we were in a very terrible camp. It was essentially beside the ocean there, and we were sleeping under tarps and under overturned boats. And we would line up every day to get our food, and there were long, long lines, and you basically try to fight for the front. Usually, as kids, we were quickest, so we were made to be the boat leaders in getting the food ahead of everybody else. So we were running, and the Portuguese police would go around with batons that looked like baseball bats, and they would swing at us if we go off of the line, or So I still remember that. Um, And so it was a tough experience in the first 6 months because we were exposed to the elements, so rain and wind and storm. We were just exposed, but eventually we went to a better camp, and that one was it was like a factory where the bunk beds would be 6 or 7 stories high, and then you have a little cubicle that's probably about the size of your king size bed, and that would be where 2 to 4 people would live together, and that's where we made plastic flowers to earn our income, so that we can then have some money to spend on ourselves, so the food and all that, and then waiting to be sponsored, or yeah,
Yeah, and December 10, 1982, the day you come to Canada. So, how do you remember December 10, 1982, the day you came to Canada, and the day you were adopted by your parents here in Canada?
Yes, so we were very blessed because my Canadian parents, the Ewings, they were looking actually for one boy because they already had one refugee boy there, but he seems to be lonely, and so they wanted another one for, I think, to help him cope. Um, and initially, from what they told us, is they were told that there were 2 boys. There was not one boy. Initially, they declined, but I think they changed their mind. That's how we came. And so December 10th was when we landed in Toronto Airport, and my parents there, standing there with the sign of our names on there, waving, and it was pretty amazing to see them. Um, and from there, my my father drove us to Owen Sound, and I remember clearly because it was a snowstorm that night, and it was the first time that we see the snow blowing against the windshield. It was just fabulous. It was just so amazing. It was like a dream. It was just so beautiful, and my sisters and my new brother, besides my own brother, and they were all there in the car, and they were all chirping and talking away. We couldn't understand anything because it sounds so quick. You know, it's like the wind. You couldn't understand anything. I mean, we had basic English words, but it's very different when you listen to them.
Very true.
So
Yeah.
it was a long drive home, but it was incredible. Yeah,
Wow.
first experience in Canada.
First ever experience.
Yeah.
So, Doctor, after such a traumatic start in a new country, how did you and your brother adapt to life in Canada? What were the key moments that helped you settle in?
Well, we were very blessed to have many people who are help us along the way. Of course, my parents were very generous, and they were inspiring to us to to do well. We also had many teachers along the way who helped us to learn English and to adapt to um, the new environment. And I think being young kids, we were quicker to adapt. I think because as we live longer, we felt like we are essentially the same as everybody else. Although in the first 6 months, I still remember hating my own language because I had to learn so much in terms of the English, all the English words. So it was a long, a hard process because you had to learn essentially a whole new language, and it was there was just so many words, and but yeah, so I remember many nights of studying late to learn as much as I could so that I can adapt faster, so I can succeed in school, because my goal at that time was I'm gonna be a doctor. So um, I knew that I had to do very well in school in order to succeed.
So, Doctor, what inspired you to become a thoracic surgeon, and what challenges did you face along the way? Now you are the only doctor in the world whose patients are able to go home the same day after undergoing giant hernia surgery. What inspired you, Doctor?
It's a long story. I just knew I wanted to be a surgeon when I was a kid. But of course, when you're young, you just don't understand the full
Very true.
spectrum of it. But It's not until I got into medical school that I understood more what surgery is about. Um, but to be inspired to be a doctor has always been something that I've had since I was young, partly because my own biological father was what we call an herbalist. So he was a doctor, but trained in the Oriental fashion. So he would take pulses and he would write prescriptions and he would make the medications using herbs of all kind. And he was apparently very good at it. And so I wanted to be able to do something similar where I can make a difference in patients' lives because I see how many people were very appreciative of what he did for them. And then similarly, my own father, when I came to Canada, my second father, he also, I still remember every Christmas, he received many gifts from patients, and you can see that, there are many people who are grateful for his help and how he can make a difference in their mental health because he's a psychiatrist. Um, so it was so luckily I had many inspiring people in my life, and so it was kind of easier for me to uh, to choose that profession. Um, and then in terms of surgery, thoracic, it was very difficult. I mean, there were so many. I was interested in neurosurgery and plastic surgery and thoracic surgery, and it just happens that thoracic surgery was one of those specialties that I thought that I would be very good at. So yeah, I applied to it and I got in. So I was very lucky.
Yeah, now you are the top surgeon
Well, I
in the
think
world. Yeah.
that I've always loved minimally invasive surgery. So basically, that's the kind of surgery where you make very tiny little holes in the patient's cavities and you try to cure diseases through small holes. And you can see the incredible difference in doing that kind of surgery versus making big cuts on the patient's bodies because they're more painful, they have more complications, they recover slower. So when you do minimal access surgery, even though it is more challenging, it does take more time, but the outcome is incredible. So that's why I've always believed in trying to improve myself in every possible way to achieve that. And luckily, I was able to achieve almost all my goals in thoracic surgery in terms of minimal access surgery. So I'm very blessed that I was able to do some of the first surgeries in Northern Ontario, like minimally invasive lung resections, anatomical lung resections. So that's where, like in your lung, you would take the lobe out, which is a better kind of surgery for cancers instead of doing just a wedge resection, which is only a small portion without taking into account the possible lymphatic spread of cancer. So when you do that kind of surgery, you have a higher cure rate. So I was the first to bring that in Northern Ontario. I also was the first one to do minimal access surgery for esophageal cancers. So I started the minimally invasive lung resection in 2007, and then in late 2009, I started minimal access surgery for the esophagus surgery, which is the ultimate because that surgery usually is very morbid. It's a big surgery. You're involving 2 or 3 cavities in your body, from your neck to your chest to your abdomen. And at that time, when I came out, the mortality for that surgery across in Ontario was 16%. So my goal, of course, was to be in a much lower position, and that's through that kind of surgery that we're able to reduce that to below, much lower than that nowadays. Um, but one of the proudest things that I did was what is called a VAT sleeve resection. So that's basically, I was the first one in Canada to do that, and that's basically doing a lung cancer surgery where you actually save the rest of the lung by taking a portion out and then reconnect it together, but doing it all through small little holes. And that's a very
Wow.
technically challenging operation. And that would have not been possible for that patient of mine who had that surgery because his lungs were very much borderline. He would not have tolerated an open surgery. So I was very blessed that I was able to do that with all the support from the staff and from the hospital providing the kind of equipment that enabled me to do those kinds of complex surgery. Yeah.
Wow, we're blessed you are here sharing everything with us. So, doctor, how do you stay up to date with the latest advancement in thoracic surgery?
Well, the main thing is you have to keep learning and training yourself. So there are luckily places where you could go and learn from others, and and you also yourself. Like when I first transitioned from an open surgery to minimal access surgery, there's a lot of visualization process and then training yourself when you do the open as if you were doing it through smaller holes. So it's like, it's a whole transition process that you do besides going and working with other surgeons as well. And I was very blessed to have colleagues who came and supported me during that transition process. Um, yeah, so I think the main thing is to keep on improving yourself, and there's always things that you can do to improve. So, yeah.
That's right. For now, I'm gonna ask you about like what are the most common lung and esophageal conditions that people should be aware of?
Well, in Northern Ontario, we mining industry is very big here. So as a result, um, the potential lung diseases from exposure to all the minerals and things like that can be an issue. So that is probably one of the more common. Actually, the smoking-related diseases is common because of the fact that miners, unfortunately, many of them do smoke. So that combination of exposure to smoking and the minerals, it is synergistic in causing even more damage to your lungs. So what I see mostly is lung cancers. So people might not realize that even though the incidence of lung cancer is fairly low compared to breast cancer, colon cancer, prostate cancer, but its mortality is very high. It is the number one cancer killer compared to three other top cancers combined. And that's why we are very blessed in Sudbury to be one of the few centers that have the lung cancer screening program. So anyone out there who has a history of smoking a pack a day for 30 years, and if they quit within the past 15 years, I would encourage them to talk to their doctor about enrolling in a lung cancer screening program, because we are luckily one of the few centers in Ontario that have that program.
All right.
That is headed by the hospital.
All right, I was about to ask the questions about lung health. How can people improve their lung health and prevent serious conditions like lung cancer and or let's say COPD?
That's a long story, but essentially, I mean, smoking is something you definitely do not want to be engaging in. It is harmful. It's been proven since 1950s to be linked to lung cancer. Spouses of smokers have 2 times the risk of lung cancer compared to the population, and children of smokers also have 3 times the 2 or 3 times the risk of lung cancer compared to the population. So that's why we know it's been proven to be harmful. So lung cancer is number one. In Sudbury, also the number 2 cause is radon gas exposure. In fact, Sudbury and probably Elliott Lake are some of the cities that have the highest rate of radon gas in the basement. So I would encourage everybody to try and get their radon gas measured properly. Usually you don't do it in one day, but you have to measure over several days so that you can get an average reading, and that way, if there is high level, then you would want your basement to have proper mitigation procedures so that you can lower the level of radon within your exposure in your house. As well, of course, fuel fumes is linked to also high risk of lung cancer. So, the mines nowadays, they're switching, luckily, to battery vehicles, which is very good for the miners' lungs, because they're not exposed to the fuel fumes as well. So those are all essential steps to improve your lung. We also know that cancers in general is linked to not just the environment, but what we eat. What we eat can significantly increase the risk. So, for instance, a higher animal diet is linked to a higher rate of cancers in general. So, by lessening the amount of meat that we eat, that's a significant improvement as well. And that's been proven by many population studies, actually. And one of the best in North America study is the Seventh-day Adventist population in Loma Linda, California, where they compare it to the same genetic cousins who are not part of the religion, but those who are in that religion, they're basically vegetarians. So vegetarians in general have 40% lower risk of heart disease and stroke and cancers in general. And the men live at least 7 years longer compared to their same genetic cousins who are not part of the group. That's just one of the many studies out there. So it is important to minimize meat because nowadays North Americans eat way too much meat, and we only need 1 gram per kilogram of body weight per day, so it's not a lot. But unfortunately, meat nowadays seems to be cheaper than vegetables, which is really unfortunate. Yeah, so hopefully, through those kinds of measures, changes, you can reduce your risk because really cancer is now replacing heart disease as the #1 killer for Canadians.
So, in addition to that, Doctor, what's one piece of medical advice you believe everyone should know and follow?
Oh, that's very tough. Well, I'm a strong believer in nutrition because nutrition is medicine. So what you eat makes who you are, and so I'm mostly whole food plant-based diet person because I know that through my own research and my own self-education in terms of nutrition that is the best type of diet to improve your overall outcome. Now we know that, of course, diet makes a big component of that, but there's many other aspects that also will make your life healthier and better. And that is by being engaged in community. That makes a big difference. Also, having a strong family connection and social network support in general is crucial to your well-being. So that's why I'm involved in many organizations because I hope to help the community resilience and health in general by providing the opportunities, especially for many vulnerable families and newcomers who are much more at risk for mental health problems when they come to Canada due to significant barriers in language and culture, so that all of that make a big difference. The diet, being involved in community, even if you feel like you're isolated, you should try to search out for local support. And luckily in Sudbury we have many such things, and such as the Sudbury Multicultural Association. We try to provide that help to newcomers so that they're connected to local services, and there's language workshops and so on and so forth. So it's pretty amazing. Our own Vietnamese Association, we try to engage people in many volunteer activities, and the young people, we try to empower them so they can become leaders in their own right. And through these experiences, they not only become more resilient, but it also provides practical experience when they go out in the real world, so that they can interact with many people. So it's all very great for me to witness all that and the changes that I've seen, because I've always been sort of focusing on my career, the stresses of being a surgeon in the earlier years. But as you get older and wiser and have a bit more wisdom, and and you're able to cope with the stress of it better, you sort of see beyond yourself and see beyond your family and community. And so it's wonderful that I've been able to have that kind of support, because you need also, of course, a spouse who supports you. It's not easy to do so many jobs, so many things on your agenda, without that kind of support. Because there are many roles in being not only a surgeon but also a husband, a father, and a leader in the organizations.
Yeah, true. So, Doctor, again, I have one more questions. Like, how do you handle patients' education to ensure they understand the complex medical procedures or diagnosis when it comes to
Well,
doing the complex surgery and everything?
right. I think by using as plain a language as possible, it overcomes that kind of barrier between a physician and a patient. But also, you try to explain the differences of not doing something versus getting the surgery. So the benefits is important for the patients to understand. Sometimes it's not just the benefits that matter. It's trying to understand um, the patient's own choices and beliefs, because their values dictate their decisions. I find the younger patients, it's not as much of an issue because they seem to be much more involved in the decision process. But I find the older patients, they expect the doctor to somewhat make the decision for them, and I don't operate like that. I try to educate the patient and inform them of their choices and what the consequences are for those choices, so they can make a better decision for themselves. So I so in so not only you tell them the statistics, but more importantly is you put it in a way that they can visualize what the outcome would be. I would, for instance, a patient who come in with a lung cancer that is curable. Uh, so you try to understand, okay, what do you where do you see yourself in 5 years? And so and you try to explore to see what their beliefs are in terms of lung cancer. And unfortunately, some of them come in with all kinds of superstitions and things like that. So you sort of have to try and dispel that. Besides giving them a picture of what it's like, let's say in 2 years, 3 years, what happens if you have no treatment for your curable cancer, or what you do if you have radiation only, or you have surgery. So what are you going to be like? What is your chance of getting there? So that's an important discussion that occurs. Really, I mean, surgery itself is a surgical skill, but it's also an art to be able to talk to the patient and get them to where they would choose a choice that makes the most sense to their values. And that's where I've become a much better doctor, of course, over the past 23 years, because I realized that you listen and you really want to address their concerns first, and but through that process, you hopefully bring them to a level of knowledge where they can make a much better decision for themselves.
All right, Doctor, almost at the end. I have a few more questions to be asked. So, you are the president of Vietnamese Association Sudbury. You are the second vice president of Sudbury Multicultural and Folk Art Association. So, what motivated you to take on leadership roles in community organization like this?
Being a former newcomer myself, so I know the challenges and and the barriers that are there in society in a new environment. So I wanted to be part of that process to help because I've been through it. So I wanted to be part of those organizations to help. But also, I think the Vietnamese culture has many beautiful things about it, and so that's why partly being part of the Vietnamese Association of Sudbury is because I wanted my children to be exposed to what is the beautiful parts of Vietnamese culture. So that's why I wanted to create activities, cultural activities, so that they can see it for themselves, because they really have become, how do you say it, assimilated, really. I mean, they might look yellow on the outside, but they're mostly white on the inside. So I wanted them to be enriched by the heritage that I had, Although, I mean, I had only 11 years of it when I came, but from what I learned also through exposure to my colleagues in the association, I learned many beautiful things. Actually, when my association members look at me, they really do see what their children will be like, because the honest truth is my language, my Vietnamese skills is not that great. I probably am the worst speaker in the whole association. So, but I want my kids to see that they can do something about it, and they can participate, they can witness the beautiful parts of the Vietnamese culture. And so, and once you build that, the momentum keeps going, and we improve every year. So I'm very proud of the fact that in February we had the largest Lunar New Year celebration in Sudbury, probably.
Wow.
We sold out. We had over 436 people, and there are many of them that didn't have any seats, but they still want to be there. So
Wow.
we're so happy that we sold out every single ticket a week before, actually, but many wanted to come. Anyhow, so we're very much looking forward to next year on January 25th, because I'm very blessed to have many colleagues at the hospital, many friends, the staff there who love our culture, and they want to be part of that. So that's why we have so many who come and share with us the beautiful parts of Vietnamese culture. So we're very proud of that, and yeah, that's an exciting part for me, is to organize those kinds of activities, and getting all the members involved, and hopefully through that whole process they can be more resilient and more engaged, and in our community and our city.
All right. So, what has been the proudest moment in your both medical career and community work, if you have to say?
Well, I think of the proud part is you mentioned is the Lunar New Year event. We're
Yeah.
all very proud of how successful it's become. And then for the career, well, I have achieved almost all the things I'd like to do, which is minimally invasive surgery in both esophagus, stomach, and lung. As I mentioned, that I'm the only one in the world that does giant hernia repairs as an outpatient. It's a skill that requires a lot of practice, and luckily I've been able to do that in the past at least 10 years, because of my ability to organize the procedure in a way that minimize the time that the patients spend under general anesthesia. So instead of the usual typical 2 hours, they would spend around 50 to 60 minutes only. And also the belief that these giant hernias require much more invasive surgery, in that they have to do all these like esophageal lengthening procedure, and so on. I believe that I might be a heretic in saying it, but I don't believe that you need to do that, and so I think the main thing is to achieve the three goals of the giant hernia repairs that I believe in, and that's why I'm able to do that kind of surgery as an outpatient, and luckily so far everything is going very well, so I'm proud of that achievement. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Doctor. It's a wonderful conversation, and thank you for sharing all the wonderful insights. Before we leave, what advice would you like to give to the new immigrants, newcomers who are listening to us right now, and those who are struggling to find their place in this country?
All I can tell them is that they've won the lottery. Coming to Canada is truly the best places on earth. And why I say that, I've been to many countries, and when you come back to Canada, you realize how amazing this country is. And we're blessed by many Canadians who are kind and generous, like my own parents. And also, but there's many support services out there. You just have to reach out and ask and connect, because you're not the only one. I've been through it, and the hardships, the arduous journey of learning a new language. It was not easy, but you just be determined, and there will be a brighter day. And so just focus on the brighter day, and you get there.
there will be brighter day for sure. Thank you
That's
so
right.
much. Thank you for blessing our show.
Thank you for inviting me.